Welcome to Leadership Matters, the podcast that explores the essential elements of effective leadership. Join us as we delve into the art and science of leadership, uncovering the strategies, insights, and stories that showcase why leadership truly matters. And now your host, Dr. Sharon H. Porter.
Hello, and welcome to Leadership Matters, the podcast that explores the essential elements of effective leadership. Thank you for joining us as we explore the art and science of leadership. We're going to uncover strategies, insights, and stories that showcase why leadership truly matters. I'm excited to welcome my guest today, Matthew Ebert. He is an amazing guest, and I can't wait for you to meet him. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. And we've got to start by you sharing a little bit about your background, education, developing leaders. Please take us from the beginning.
Sure. So I grew up in New York, and I went to school in Boston and New York. And after finishing up my grad work in education at NYU, I became a teacher in Dorchester, Massachusetts, which seems like a lifetime ago. It's like 20 years ago at this point. And I worked in a middle school there as a teacher, and then became a data coach and a director of academic innovation, which is a title I totally made up. And then they asked me to lead one of the small schools inside of the building. We were 4 small learning communities. And then I became the principal in a school in Baltimore City when we moved here. And I think my leadership journey was one that always wanted to be in charge of a small school. And my thinking had always been that I wanted to know everybody and their grandmother. I wanted to be able to make the most impact possible. And growing up in larger schools, what I knew is I didn't know my principal. I didn't love school, and my sisters did. And after teaching in schools, I was able to see that being a teacher was amazing, and I had more direct impact than I ever would. But if I were able to move out of the classroom, I would be able to create the conditions for lots of good teaching. And that's what I really wanted to do when I came to Baltimore City. And after walking away after 10 years, what I can share is that it is incredibly and entirely possible to create conditions for teachers to stay and thrive and be people. And the longer you can keep good educators who want to be there, the more amazing things you can do and the better things are for kids. And I think my leadership journey has really been from someone who came in focused on numbers and achievement and grew into the idea of those are byproducts of doing the work of caring for individuals, both adults and kids. But if you do not start with adults, it never comes through to the kids. And the real work is in the relationships and the instruction, the conversations. But the data, the numbers, the achievement, it only happens consistently and continuously if we're making sure we're cultivating this culture of care for the adults.
I love that. 3 things that you said. Relationships, definitely. It creates or destroys, right?
Everything.
I absolutely love that. And the fact that you also not just focus on leadership, but also on student achievement. And I think that's important because a lot of your educational leaders who focuses on leadership development, that's their only focus is building the leaders. But our ultimate goal is student achievement, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think my way of doing it, or at least the metric the leverage that I tried to use, was the idea that we're going to win together, we're going to lose together, but the idea is we're going to do it together. And that if we can get the kids to believe that they're safe and loved and in a good place, then they can hear us. And I think that message is the same for adults. And it's one that I think we miss all the time in leadership and all the time in education, that we spend so much time focusing on what teachers need to be doing with the kids that no one does it for the adults.
For the adults. Wow. I love it. Teachers are cheering around the world for the youth.
Yeah. I'm a player coach for sure.
Yep. I love it. So let's talk about your philosophy when it comes to developing school leaders. School leadership and developing leaders is really a true passion of mine. So I'm interested to know what your philosophy of that is.
Yeah, so I don't have one written down. I won't lie to you. I'd love to have one written down. It seems like it would be really apt right now. But I think this piece of my philosophy is is less about developing people into what I think they should be and helping them along their journey, right? So for each adult in my school, all the teachers, we had weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly one-on-one meetings. And those conversations were as much about them and what they want to talk about as they were about things we needed to talk about instructionally or culturally. And in those conversations, over time, we built bonds and relationships. And some folks went and got their admin certification and licensure because they were so sure they wanted to be principals. And then they stayed with us and they said, yeah, I don't want that job. And then some folks did it and they left and they took over other places and they're thriving. And some left and took over other places and were like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And then some folks left teaching after several years for good because they were on to their next thing. So I think leadership development is the wrong set of words for what I hope to do. I think helping folks along their path and their individual journey, which is leadership and which takes them to leaders in other places, is my belief that we're here to help each other and we're here to take care of each other in this thing.
Wow. Thank you for that. And, we can't not talk about the challenges that leaders face today in the educational sector. And you are, just very recently stepped out of the principalship, right? So you are very aware of some of the challenges that we are still facing.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry about that. I left it. I left y'all there.
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of these unique challenges. And, the major part that's staring in our face is really the post-pandemic effects, right? That has occurred. I'm talking social and emotional. I'm talking loss of learning. I mean, there's so many, right? Let's talk about that. What do you see as some of the major unique challenges?
I think the one you mentioned, we're still seeing issues from, right? Kids have always been kids, but I think what I saw and I think what we still see is that social development that happens in school or in groups of people in clubs and activities, that social norming that happens as kids get a little bit older didn't take place. And so what we saw initially was behaviors that we'd classify as immature, but were really right in line with where they were developmentally at that point. And I think we're still feeling the fallout from that. Yeah. So I think that's a hard thing. And that learning loss, and I'll say this to you, I'll say it to everybody, it's easy for folks on the sidelines to shout, acceleration, acceleration, that's what we need to do. But when there are kids who do not know the elementary level skills, you cannot just jump into higher level acceleration. That's not how things work. That's not how brains work. And I think that's a real challenge. And I think it's a political challenge as well, because, and I don't know if you ever encountered this, because everyone went to school, they all think they can do your job.
Exactly.
And so I think it's those pandemic challenges and the COVID money, the good government money that has been so affirming and helpful that's about to go away, to not just meet those challenges, but also meet the ongoing realities that we've always faced. So I think that the COVID life is real. Yeah. I think the ongoing politicization of the work that folks are scared to speak up. I'll be honest, when I hired folks, when I mentored folks, I tell them to teach their values and speak their truths. And then I've got them. And I wouldn't have brought them on board if I didn't want that. Wow. And those values speak to, like, kids should get to be who they are. And you should get to believe what you want to believe as long as it's not hurting anybody else. And so that's always a hard one. And then I don't know about you, and I don't know when this happened, but man, I'm glad I didn't have social media in school.
Right.
I mean,
oh my goodness.
If nothing else, everyone can talk about the distractions, and that's fine. My thing is this: if you had a hard day in school, you left it at school, you still could feel it, but it didn't follow you home. Yeah. And now you never leave it. And that is just an ongoing trauma. And I'm not here to blame children. It's not their fault. Like, we created these things.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Like, we created these things. And, if I were 13, I want one too. And I think that's a real challenge, right? Like, can't put the, genie back in the bottle, as it were. And I don't know what we do to continuously combat what will always be 13-year-olds giving each other a hard time. That is now, listen, I don't care what school you're in. A 13-year-old is going to do something silly that you couldn't plan for, that happened outside of school, and it's going to impact that child's well-being outside and inside of the school community. Best we can do is speak to it, be kind, be thoughtful, but you're going to have to react to these ongoing rolling crises, and that's frustrating and can have really calamitous consequences.
And, you speak on, we're talking specifically about social media, but really anything that affects the community and that's brought into the school. You know what I mean? Because we're dealing with everything, social media is definitely a big part of that. But really anything out in the community that students bring in, educators have to handle. They have to deal with it. We can't say, oh, that happened out there,
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, it's for the adults too, right? There's no, we can pretend there's a separation,
right?
But there is not. So our school is and was a charter lottery, right? So kids come from all over the city. And so, Baltimore is a microcosm of the United States. We have families that are well-resourced and families that are under-resourced, families with single families, dual parents, grandmothers, aunts, uncles, living through different traumas, living through different challenges. And I love that they're all together. My daughter goes to a city school, and I love the fact that she's with everyone. But I gotta tell you, the kids who come from areas in schools that were consistently locked down generally have more academic struggles, and not because of any innate ability, but because their schools had more time in lockdowns than instruction. Right? Like,
so true.
And that's hard. That's not a reflection of those kids' intellect or the teacher's ability, right? Like, their time had to be given over to safety.
Yes. No, absolutely.
And that's just a real thing. And that crosses all demographics, right? Like, but it makes it that much harder. So when we talk about what they're bringing, it's not just what they face today.
Yeah.
It's what they faced their school career.
Wow.
Yeah.
And sitting here listening to you, it makes me think about actually my journey in and out of the schoolhouse, in central office, in the regional office, back to the schoolhouse and back.
You've seen it from every angle. From
every angle. But what is probably most alarming is the time that I spent out and came back. How things, it was like, okay, I really didn't have this lens in central office or in the area office. So individuals who spend the majority of the time outside of the schoolhouse, I really think that time should be spent directly in the schoolhouse, because you lose that lens. You know what I'm saying? You lose that lens. And schools so oftentimes feel like that they are alone, that they're fighting the battle alone.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir on that one. I will share that when I left my role, it was because I was never going to be a district level person or a superintendent level state person, because if I were going to work in the school district, I was going to work in schools. And my role now with the Ebert Educational Consulting and the support work I do is directly with leaders to, and I quote myself on this one, like, to make the job less lonely.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, your job is lonely because central office has forgotten what it was like. And teachers, God bless them, don't have to see the whole field, even though some of them do, right? Yeah. They don't have to consider it. And you have to be the CEO, CFO, COO of the school, instructional lead, cultural lead, attendance monitor, deal with the families that are unhappy about something that you had no idea even took place.
Exactly.
Right? And that's just your Monday morning, right? Like, and you have to do it without the supports of folks who understand.
Yeah.
And so, like, back to my philosophy of working, when I'm working with these principals, it's to say, like, you can talk to me about it, and, like, not only can we brainstorm and troubleshoot, but you can also just complain to someone who's not going to evaluate you or judge you.
Right.
And who gets it because I sat in that chair for 10 years.
Wow.
Right? Like, and I loved my job, but it is the hardest job that I will ever have.
It is. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, you're tired. You're tired, lady. You're tired.
Absolutely. But
everybody is. Yeah. It's a full contact sport with no pads and no doctors and no trainers.
Oh my God, I love that analogy, because you're absolutely correct.
You make 1 million decisions a day, and then you go home and make 1 million more, and then people ask, Why do principals only stay 3 years? Come on now.
I love it. Oh my goodness. And just speaking of all of that, we have, of course, the leaders that are coming up, whether they're teacher leaders, assistant principals, those who are, eager to
Yeah,
take the seat. What are some of the most critical skills that you feel they should begin to possess if they don't already?
absolutely. I got better at my job because the people with whom I worked and the space allowed me to evolve, right? Like, I'm honest about that. I was a better principal in years 8, 9, and 10 than I was in 1, 2, and 3. And I'm certain it was because I was surrounded with incredibly capable, smart people. And after we got things righted a little bit from where we were, I got the chance to listen, and not just listen, but act, right? So I think it is a very old idea that we need to know everything and be in charge of everything. So I think the skill of not just empathy, but understanding that there are brilliant ideas around you and you have to get out of the way, which does not mean people don't need mentorship or supervision, but it means letting good ideas come up and making active spaces for it, right? So one of the things I talk about in my upcoming TED Talk, and one of the things I preach in my workshops and my writing, is that you have to amplify teacher voices, and you have to actually make systems that allow for it, instead of just simply, oh, so-and-so had a good idea, right? You have to make a system that works so people can constantly share out their good ideas, and not just with individuals, but with the group. So we did that through an app called Slack as like a real-time communication tool, but there's other ways to do it, right? So I think amplifying teacher voices is huge. I think baking it into the system is a big deal. I think the other pieces that I often share with folks are one, a principal's job is, forgive me, not the kids. It is to play the orchestra, right? It is the job of making sure that folks are walking in lockstep towards the same vision and mission, and creating a space for them to do it in their own way and evolve together. And I think that's a really hard job, but that requires someone to see the whole field. So I think that strategic vision is important. I think the ability to implement that vision in a way that lets, you be you and me be me, but both work towards the vision, is how you retain good people.
Yeah.
So I think those are a couple of the things that are really necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just the ability to not just see each person as a person before a professional, but to help tie each other to that vision that says, you're not alone in this work, and creating a space. I'm a very big believer in the leader sets the tone and creates the conditions. I don't make any of it happen, and it's not about power, and it's not about authority. People will do for you if they believe in you.
That is so true.
And that's where I think my ability to stay 10 years in that role at one school was from everyone else lifting me up, because I gave them the space to lift each other up.
I love that. And that's from the lens of a new educational leader. It takes time. You know what I'm saying? That's not something that you get.
No.
You don't learn that in principal school, right?
No, I learned how to stay out of special ed jail in principal
That's
school.
right.
That's what I learned. I learned how to get
special
compliance.
ed and finance jail, right? And
Listen, that's what I learned. I learned how to get compliance. I don't learn how to get creativity or innovation, right? So
right.
I hope for new leaders, right, that, like, especially if they're teachers, I don't know how you felt about this transition, right? But there's almost no connection between, for me, being a teacher and being a principal.
Oh,
the skills are different.
Absolutely.
And the job is different. So, like, I let all my, like, clients know, like, right, are you leading with the idea that says you make mistakes? Because if you are, that's great, right? Are you leading with the idea that says you're a person and you're going to drop the ball sometimes? If you are, that's great. So for new leaders, like, don't expect yourself to get it right. You're going to make the wrong call a lot. And you just need to be upfront and honest about that, right? Like, I made the wrong call, guys, because if you admit it, then everyone else feels free to make their mistakes and speak up about them and not hide them. And then hopefully that transmits to kids that, like, hey, you can make mistakes here, and we got you.
Love it. Oh my God. Yeah, owning those mistakes and learning from them, right? And
And
so
learning from them.
yeah, that's the bigger part. You can make the mistakes, but let's not continue making the same mistakes.
No, I
Yeah,
mean,
there's no learning there.
there's no learning there. I talk about one time we were supposed to go on a field trip that had been planned out. Everyone had their roles, everyone had their responsibilities. And I straight up forgot to book the buses.
Oh my God.
I just didn't do it. It wasn't usually my job, and this time it was because I had said I would take care of it, which we always know is a kiss of death for a principal. Don't say you're going to take care of it. But I said I didn't do it. And the fast forward of that story is, hey, those kids weren't on that field trip, but because we reached out to some folks who were like team players and like they drove vans, they did what they needed to do and all those things. And we were able to say the next day, hey, this was my fault, right? This happened because other people made this happen. You guys pitched in and you guys, did what you need to do. We always called it moving the dirt, right? You do what you need to do. But I made a mistake here and I'm sorry, that's my fault. And it won't happen again, guys. But like, I want you to know that I make mistakes just like you do, just like the kids do, because we're all people first. And this is a place where you can say I made a mistake and thank the folks that helped you.
Love it. I love it. Whew, I tell you. And so, and speaking of these individuals, and that's why I believe mentoring and coaching is so critical for principals and even assistant principals who are aspiring to the role, right?
Oh, they are the missing link, right? Like we don't do anything for APs.
And that for many years, which is, that actually, Matt, that's why I am back in the schoolhouse, actually. I was the leadership development coach for my school district, working with new assistant principals and new principals. And it was based off of my findings for my dissertation. And when I tell you assistant principals from across the U.S. was in my inbox asking, how do I get into this program? Because of course, I would advertise, I would, take the pictures during the meetings and all of this stuff. And across the nation, it just was not anything like it. Yeah. And it really got me to thinking, Matt, right?
Yeah, good for you. It's needed.
It is needed. And that's really how my Aspiring Leadership Academy was born, was everybody asking me, how can I get in your program? I'm like, I'm sorry, it's just for my district, Yeah. And and then I was politely nudged that I couldn't do that for myself while I was doing it for the district.
Politely.
Politely. And I took it upon myself to say, okay, well, I'm going to go back to the schoolhouse where I will not be working with new principals as a, job description.
Yeah. Good
and
for you.
I continued my academy, and it was the best thing ever.
It must have been beautiful.
Yes. And, and then, because that was almost 5 years ago, and then my assistant principals became principals, and they were like, well, are you going to do something for new principals? And then the new principal roundtable was born.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible, right? And like, it's not that folks don't want to develop them. It's that everyone in schools is busy.
They're busy. Exactly.
And it's hard to make time for everything.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure yours is a real blessing because they don't end up making the same mistakes that most of us make as first-year principals.
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah. And see, that leads me to the importance of collaboration and networking. Let's talk about that, because you mentioned how lonely the job is, and you hear that a lot. And I don't know if people really understand what that really means. You know what I mean? But that's why networking and collaborating is so important. And I'm not only speaking about colleagues in your district, to branch out to other districts, other states, although there are different policies, there are different ways of doing things. Leadership is leadership.
Leadership is leadership.
And there's so many amazing things that leaders across this country are doing. If we only get together and share all of this wonderful innovation, right? Mm-hmm. So talk about really some of the great collaboration and networking opportunities that you've had and that you've benefited from.
So I'll share 2 or 3 of the coolest, what we call professional development, because I'll be honest, I think professional development is a misnomer. And usually we're just punishing our teachers for, I don't know what they did in a past life. But we would bring in a couple of things. We went to Nordstrom to learn from them about their customer service work and got to meet a store manager and hear these parables about work and have these conversations about what it looked like to lead an organization where there was the same mission, but everyone was different. They all still minded their part of the store. And to this day, that is the PD that I get the most praise for, right? Like, it was so impactful. And like you mentioned, leadership is leadership. It had nothing to do with the educational world. It had to do with organizational structures, hierarchies, and autonomy. We also brought in Under Armour because we're in Baltimore. And they came and spoke about how they focus on innovation and what it looks like and what it feels like. And then we did a similar thing with Warby Parker about what it looks like to disrupt and how they manage that. And so that was with school. But I'll be honest with you, one of the things that I realized I missed after stepping away is I didn't make time to network. And I think that's useful for other people to hear in itself.
Yes.
Because I was busy and I was focused on being the best person I could be for my job. And that's admirable, but we missed out. What I did do was with people inside the district was I was fortunate that people took pity on me and I reached out to other principals and I was no benefit to them, Doc. I was zero value add to them, but I had a group of about 5 folks who, whenever I texted or called with something, I was like, hey, I don't know what to do here. Mm-hmm. They picked up the phone, they wrote back the email, and I'll tell you this, they did it way faster than anybody from the district office ever did.
Absolutely.
Right? There was a gentleman at a school who I called because I was like, hey, listen, the building next door just evacuated. We saw it at our window. We don't know what's going on. There's a bomb threat next door. I assume we should evacuate, but there's no real guidelines for like what we do here. And the folks in the district office didn't necessarily answer their phone. What do I do? He's like, oh, I would leave. I was like, yeah, I figured that was a safe bet, but I didn't want to be punished later for it.
Right.
So I'm going to go with, okay, somebody I respect said do it, right? And that was one of the more immediate needs. But you and I both know that things come up long-term and short-term that you can't ask everybody.
Yeah.
And so having those trusted mentors who people want to help and they want to share what they know, and you've created that with your roundtable, right? Like, you've created that mechanism. I didn't have that mechanism. I was fortunate that I had the, ability to create it myself, but not everybody does. That's and right. So even now, my former resident principals or teachers will reach out and say like, hey, I'm having this struggle. It's in the Bronx, but like, what do I do? I was like, cool, this is what I would do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? Or here's a story similar. We don't want to be told what to do necessarily.
Okay. Yes,
we want to have our experiences echoed and hear what other folks did in the situation.
Yep. And a great thing about in my school district, we are in clusters. Basically, it's schools that are, very close in proximity.
Sure.
And so I love the fact, and we have a cluster group chat, and we do exactly what you are saying. People put in there, hey guys, what about this? What about that? And I'm talking principals who've been principals for years. I'm talking about first year principals.
Yeah.
And it's a great space, right?
Yeah.
Are free to just, dump it all in there. Hey guys, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah.
And people respond.
People respond. And also, like, you can just be like, it was a crap day.
Right.
And, like,
exactly.
You get it. Like, you don't have to explain it, right? Like, because it's always Friday afternoon, Doc, ain't it? Like, it's always Friday afternoon at 5:00, my phone's ringing. I'm like, ugh, something happened outside of school, and they couldn't just hold it till Monday, and it's going to ruin my evening.
Oh, my goodness.
It's always Friday afternoon.
Wow. And so keeping up with these aspiring leaders, what tips, so what advice would you give them in their current state now, those sitting there, in their schools and looking to become principals? What's your advice to them?
My biggest advice is to focus on your why, which I know can be a bit cliche. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to put a caveat on that. If your why is because all kids deserve a great education, like, forgive me, I'm not interested in that, because we can all agree on that. That's not going to sustain you, right? Like, what's behind that why you want to go into this job that is a real challenge, that is all consuming, right? And has an immense amount of ability to make a big difference. what is the actual thing you want to accomplish in this role? What do you bring to it that's going to add value to the adults and kids in your school, right? Like, there are folks who say, well, I think I could do it better than others. Okay, that's fine. Why? Like, what makes you uniquely suited to deal with teachers, of which I was one, and we are difficult to manage, right? Children and families. What is the reason that you want to sit in this chair and do this work? This meaningful, amazing, joyful, exhausting, headache-causing work.
All adjectives that are accurate.
Just depends on the minute, not even the day.
I love it. I love it. And so, you work with, leaders, probably teachers as well.
Yep.
But how do you measure the success of the initiatives or the information that you are sharing and implementing? How do you know if it's successful?
Absolutely. So one, I'll be honest that, right, I'm still new to this game. And I'm developing things as I go, and the surveys and the feedback from the people I'm working with is helpful. But as somebody who is used to doing the job on site and seeing the difference, I can share that I met with one of my principals last week, and he has shared that he is happier than he's ever been, and there's more joy in the community, and he's meeting with his new teachers regularly, right? That was something that we did when I was a principal, right? I held these staff meetings or individual meetings, and it's something I tell folks to do. Like, I don't care how many you can do, but start meeting with folks. So he's meeting with those folks regularly. That's happening, and those teachers are feeling good, right? And they're sustaining through Christmas, which we know is a thing, right? So there's those things happening. He has spent time with his leadership team trying to cultivate an actual team mentality instead of just throwing them into it, which he thought would work. And as you and I both know, you can't just put smart people together. That's not enough to forge a team. Right. So that's one way. The other way is I'm working with somebody who's a brand new principal in year 2. And I was asking about their school day and how they spend their day. And you can imagine it's a lot of putting out fires, and the day gets done. And like, what did I do? And so I was like, okay, how many meetings were you in last week? 16. Okay. I need you to stop going to every meeting. And I need you to go into the classrooms in the mornings and not evaluate. Just go into the classrooms, smile, give a thumbs up, pat a kid in the shoulder, grab pencils for the teacher, and just be present, and tell me how that feels afterwards. And she's like, oh, this is great. I was like, right. Before you couldn't tell me what was going on in the building, and now you can tell me exactly what's going on in the building. And so then she's asked, can you just design my schedule for me to start with? And I was like, absolutely. And so for me, her asking that and then running with it is success, because she doesn't have that network of people to ask, and she doesn't know how to do the job because we don't learn that in principal school.
No.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it. So Matt, please share with everyone. There are leaders out there that are going to be listening to this that may need your services. Please share how they can connect, how can they follow, and how can they reach you?
Sure. Well, I'm available, Doc. Let me tell you that to start with. No, I'm really happy to help, and this work it kind of reinvigorated me in the building phase of the world, which is something that I love. So you can find me on Facebook, on LinkedIn at Ebert Educational Consulting, or at Matthew Ebert. You can find me on Twitter at Ebert Consults. Those are the best 2 ways. And then, of course, we have the website, eberteducationalconsulting.com. And then I have a piece out in Ed Week right now, and I have a few follow-ups coming in there, and a piece coming out in Edutopia's monthly newsletter in January.
I love it.
Oh, and the very exciting, very nerve-wracking TED Talk coming up in February.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Now,
listen, doing new things, doing things that scare us, right? That's what we're supposed to do.
So where is
following your lead
in Baltimore? Where is the TED Talk going to be held?
It is in New York.
It is in New York.
I only have 1+1, so my mother is not pleased.
Okay, I know she's not.
Yeah, she is not pleased. But yeah, so I'll be going to New York. We'll be filming it at TED Studios, and if I can get through it without bumbling around too much, they'll put it up on TED.com in the coming months. I didn't realize there's no teleprompters.
Wow, really?
Yeah, they don't tell you that when you sign up for this. And so I let them know that Ted and I have some disagreements about teleprompters. Ted did not seem to care. Yeah, so it's getting close.
And what's the length of time that you have to speak?
Well, the last thing our coach shared was great. He said, what they really found is that the most watched ones seem to be about 9 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
So they give you between 8 and 12 minutes, but I'm shooting for 9 or 10, and it's on the exact topic of, how we cultivate a culture of care and how, forgive me, I think so many schools and districts are focused on the wrong things.
I cannot wait. Oh,
yeah, thank you.
How exciting.
Yeah. Listen, I learned from you, right? We spoke and I was like, this lady is doing stuff that scares her. She's doing hard things. She's doing new things, and she makes no apologies.
No apologies.
So I'm following that lead. I'm out here. I love it. Trying to bring it to the masses. What we did at our school, even though it was small on a charter, there are things that are replicable. Yeah. And there are ways to be better, and we're here to help each other. So I'm hoping just to continue to spread that message of take care of yourself, take care of our children, and most importantly, take care of each other.
I love that. And districts as well as individual school leaders can reach out, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's awesome. Oh, my goodness. It has truly been a pleasure speaking with you, Matt. I'm incredibly grateful for your time this evening. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. I love watching everything you're putting out there and learning from all the folks you have on. It's incredible.
Thank you. And to my audience, thank you for joining us for another enlightening episode of Leadership Matters. I hope our discussion has provided you with valuable insights and inspiration to enhance your leadership journey. As we wrap up today's conversation, remember that leadership is not just about a position or a title. It's about making a positive impact on those around you. Whether you're leading a team, a company, or your own life, the principles of effective leadership are universal. Before we part ways, here's a thought. Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. So as you navigate the challenges and opportunities that leadership presents, always strive to lead with empathy, integrity, and genuine commitment to the growth and well-being of others. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share, like, and subscribe. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, remember, leadership matters.
Thank you for joining Leadership Matters. Please like, share, and subscribe. You can catch us on your favorite podcast platform every Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.